Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Elevate, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Hello, and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. Today, we're very excited to have a special guest with us to talk about this ever-changing need, this ever-changing topic, this ever-changing landscape that we live in around DEI work. Sharon and I first met a long time ago when she was at the Santa Cruz LGBTQ Center during the pandemic. We did a virtual event broadcast together. And now we're very excited to have her on the show to talk about DEI, where the world of DEI stands, and have her join us in conversation today. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I just want to say that I remember meeting you at Creating Change a long time ago, like a decade ago. You did a workshop, and it blew my mind and helped us at the Diversity Center, is what the organization was called, our LGBT Community Center. It helped us like triple the amount of money that we raised so quickly.
I love that.
So just want to say I'm so pleased to be here with my DEI hat on, but also as a fundraiser myself, just how incredible you are. And I love that now you have this offering to share your wisdom, such a gift.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. What a great way to kick things off in conversation.
She's turning red, y'all. She's turning red.
Well, Kristen, let's officially introduce Sharon.
Let's do it. Sharon Papo, she, her, is the founder and CEO of Indigo Skies Consulting, where she has propelled numerous small and mid-sized community-based organizations to strengthen their boards and run successful emergency and capital campaigns, collectively raising well over $100 million. In a powerful collaboration with Dr. Cornell Verdeja Woodson, Sharon co-founded LGBTQ eLearning, a company that has received widespread acclaim for its self-paced e-learning course, Building LGBTQ plus Inclusive Workplaces. This e-course serves as a guiding light, fostering understanding, compassion, and helping to create a greater sense of belonging in workplaces across various sectors. Sharon also is the co-author of Success Redefined. Sharon, we are so glad that you're joining us today. I feel like this is a big topic.
It is a big topic, especially right
now. A really big topic.
Yeah.
And also, we're sitting here in, Sam and I are sitting here in 2025 in the United States of America. So let's just dive right in. Why is it important right now to focus on building LGBTQ plus inclusive workplaces?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think it always has been.
Right.
I think back to, I don't think it's a new issue.
Nope.
I think back to my own workplace experience. And I think back to a workplace doing work that felt so important and that I loved in many ways, but that I really felt that every time I walked in the door, I had to leave a big part of myself at the door, that I knew that I worked with people that weren't going to be accepting of me for being part of the LGBTQ community. And I sat in my office with no pictures of my wife and my kids, my family. And I remember one day seeing one of my colleagues go to the reception area, and her boyfriend had brought her lunch, and she ran up and gave him a big hug and a big kiss on the lips right there in the workplace and said, "Oh, honey, thank you so much." And I felt so happy for her, because it's wonderful to see our colleagues happy and in love. And then I also felt this pit in my stomach, because I knew that I couldn't have that, and not at that workplace. And so I left. And that put me on the course to eventually being professionally queer and saying, I want a workplace where I don't ever have to pay that price, because there was a cost to me, and there was a cost to my work, and there was a cost to my relationships. So that's part of why I do this work, is I want to make sure that the people don't have that experience again as much as possible.
Yeah.
And we know that it's important, because our organizations are only possible and effective because of the people we have doing the great work that they do. And if we don't have those people passionate and showing up with their best, then our impact is going to be impacted.
Yeah.
And so it's not just the right thing to do and hopefully in alignment with your organizational values, but it's also a good business strategy for talent retention and avoiding burnout. So it's important on a lot of levels. And even today, and maybe especially today.
Maybe especially.
Yeah. I think what's interesting too in what you're saying, especially when I'm thinking of current day, and we're looking at businesses making decisions around DEI based on the voices that they're hearing.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're failing to hear the voices of the folks who are doing the work, that are bringing their genius and talent every day to the table. And that somehow we're in a space where that is considered an acceptable cost.
Right.
And that, I think, is sort of, that's the thing I keep coming up against. It's right now. It's like, yeah, there are costs regardless of where you sit. And yet somehow the enfranchised voices that are getting the most airplay sometimes are very different than when I'm looking at the business case for what we're doing and how we're able to do it.
Absolutely.
And we could just look at Target when we want to think about a cost.
Exactly.
Target, as an example, in 2016, they made some really big commitments around DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I like to add belonging in there.
Yeah.
Of course, there's lots of ways that we can, lots of letters we can use. So Target made this huge commitment, and then political winds shifted, and they got scared, and they said, "Oh, we're gonna be neutral on the issue," and they pulled back. But they had been really upfront, so they had a lot of customer loyalty and employee loyalty because of their values and their stand and their amazing Pride collection. People loved going to Target. They loved spending their dollars there, shopping there. And so when they pulled back, thinking it would be just sort of value neutral, they had a really big impact. They had the founders' children coming out saying this is not in alignment with the company values. They had a huge Target national boycott that was really significant in many communities, certainly the Black community, the LGBT community, and many others. And that impacted their stock price tanked 12%, and their foot traffic in 49 states went down between 5 to 7%. So, was it value neutral? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So, right. Companies they're getting pressure from both ways. But when you have stood for something and it's part of your values to step back, people are going to notice and they're going to vote with their dollars.
It's interesting because I think initially when the efforts to roll back DEI work started to hit the news, we were seeing stories of big corporations like Target making big choices to pull back on DEI, thinking it would be a neutral stance. But I'm also now in conversations with nonprofits talking about the pressures that they're receiving. So I'm curious, that same pressure comes at the nonprofit sector as it does the for-profit sector. What have you seen, Sharon, in the nonprofit space? How are nonprofits responding to that pressure?
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to make sure, finishing talking about the corporate space, is many corporations are standing strong in their values. And I think about Apple and Microsoft and Costco and companies that have been attacked, and they say, hold on, this isn't just a nice thing to do. This is a good strategic business move. And doing this work, having an inclusive workplace where we can leverage the brilliance of the diversity of our country and our world, that's a great business practice that has built us into the most successful businesses in the world.
Yeah.
So no, we're not going back, because it is legitimately a good business practice, as well as in alignment with our values and the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So not everyone's going back. And and for nonprofits, first of all, everyone needs to start with their values. What do you stand for? What are you most committed to doing? What's the impact you're committed to making? And what is in alignment with that? So everyone is meeting this time, and it is harder for organizations that receive a lot of federal funding.
Yeah.
Diversification of funding is always a good thing for all the reasons. But organizations that have a lot of federal funding, I think, because especially the executive orders are navigating this in a trickier spot than organizations that have more diversification of funding and therefore have more leeway.
Yeah, and there's more choice.
Right,
I'm wondering if you are seeing the potential or actually seeing it happen. We're talking about the for-profit sector and the nonprofit sector, and there's a partnership. Mm-hmm. There's an interplay in fundraising in the future of nonprofit work about what those relationships look like, what funding looks like from the for-profit sector for our nonprofit friends. Are you seeing implications of, I don't even know what to call it. Do we call it a dust up? Do we call it around this topic? Do you see impact happening in the partnerships in the nonprofit space? I'm thinking specifically, sponsorships changing, who's coming to the table, what they're willing to fund, what that looks like. Is corporate granting changing? So we know, a lot of folks are federal is over here and is kind of that third rail, but then there's sort of that nuanced space and dance space in the middle with the actual relationships that we're having with our corporate friends.
Yeah. And it's different for different companies.
Yeah.
I think everyone is meeting the moment in their own way. So some folks are doubling down and they're saying, this is values aligned and this is what we're about, who we're about. We know this is the right thing to do. And they are holding strong. Others waiting and watching, taking a step back. Others are really continuing, but they're doing it quietly. They're saying, we don't want to bring a bunch of attention to us, but we are holding strong in our commitment. And that's actually a lot of people who are holding strong that I think even have gotten some media backlash of, they're really taking a step back. Maybe they've changed some titles internally, but really the work is continuing. And then there are folks who are really stepping back. And I wonder, for many of those, if the commitment was really strong in the first place.
Yeah, that's a fair evaluation.
Yeah.
We had Mariah Monique on the show talking about corporate sponsorships. And one of the things that she's seeing is the trend that corporate marketing dollars are shifting because perception and public favor is a better marketing tool than billboards and advertisements. And that while some organizations have downshifted or hold steady around their DEI practices, there is a contingency of corporate folks that are not only doubling down, but are really saying, we want to step into this space fully, redirect some of our marketing dollars here. So I think there's something hopeful about that. And we had the experience, Sharon, our work so much is in the event space. And we had the experience with an organization we were working with, an LGBTQ community center, that was getting ready for their big gala event and contacted us and said, we're worried about losing all of our corporate support, which is about 50% of our gala budget. How do we compensate or plan for that? And ultimately, after many conversations, where we got to was that if they are not values aligned, then it is not the funding we need right now. And they told the story of the need that they had, the impact they were having. And some of their corporate partners doubled and tripled their giving this year.
Yeah.
So that idea of really doubling down on that investment, not only is it a really good business decision, but we're seeing that some people step out of the space, other people step in. Yep. And I think that that's kind of exciting to see.
Yeah. And we have to think also about not only this moment today, but also tomorrow. And organizations, whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, they have to think about their workforce. And when you look at the demographics, if you look at Gallup's 2024 poll, Gen Z, which is now 13 to 28 years old, 22.3% of them identify under the LGBTQ plus umbrella. About half is bisexual, about 2% is transgender, non-binary. So in 4 years, they're all going to be workforce eligible.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you think about not only the talent, but also consumers, companies are looking at demographics.
So what do you
they have to think.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So they have to think who's buying my products, who's working at our company, who does this impact? And this is a moment in time, this backlash. But when I look at demographics, LGBTQ plus people are not going to be legislated away, no matter how much you attack our rights. And just so it's very clear, it's not everybody's rights equally being attacked. It's really a lot of it about folks who are transgender and non-binary, especially when we look at the almost 1,000 bills that have been proposed or are currently active this year. I mean, it is outstanding trying to legislate people out of public life. So we have to think about, you can't legislate people away. So when history, when the future looks back at this time, where did you take a stand? And how are people going to respond to that?
Yeah. Well, and I think too about that from the vantage point of our nonprofit friends. And I was reminded of this quote recently, and it landed very differently. Some money is really expensive to take.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so when I think about organizations and who they're in relationship with and partnering now, and what those messages are, and what corners we might bend to perhaps still maintain funding, or, what that dance looks like.
That's right.
We're actually communicating and showcasing that dance internally for our employees, that we expect to show up every day and be mission aligned and act our mission out. Mm-hmm. But we're also saying that to other donors.
Yeah.
And that, for me as a donor, that's kind of a fascinating chair and popcorn moment to pull up and watch sort of what that is. Because I think, to your point, in terms of history and values shouldn't be mutable to wind daily. They should be evaluated, and we should come back to the table and take a look at that. But I think we forget all the eyes and all the vantage points that are looking at those decision moments for us as organizations sometimes.
Well,
and when I train around fundraising, as many people use this, the ABCs, when we think about our donors, right? They need the ability to give, the belief in your work, that values alignment, and the connection, right? It's that B. It's the belief in your work. It's that values alignment. And if they don't have that values alignment, then may they find something else that makes their heart sing. But when we are strong in what we value, in the impact we're making, and in the stand that we're taking in the community, people who have that values alignment, that belief, as you just said, Sam, they're going to double down.
Yeah. Yep.
And they want to support people and organizations that are making a huge difference and standing strong in this time.
So you have this sense of hope to your position as you speak to future, and we're in a moment in time. I want to ask very specifically, what do you think the future of DEI work is?
Well, I think that it is shifting and changing, and some of that is hard and uncomfortable, and some of that is beautiful and wonderful. People are really talking about their values, hopefully. What do we stand for? Yeah. So sometimes hard moments make you do that. Also, I think people are saying, okay, what's really made a difference and what hasn't? And how are we looking at that? And I think some of the impacts of these attacks, even though if they've been painful, some of them have had ripple effects that aren't all bad. So there was an attack on a university, and they said, your DEI program is illegal. So they said, okay, we're going to take all these people, and they didn't fire them. They just spread them out across different departments throughout the university. So instead of being all together talking to themselves, suddenly now they're in all these different departments having the conversations as colleagues. And maybe the impact of that is actually going to have a greater effect.
Yeah.
So I am hopeful.
Yeah.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm also grieving the attacks that are happening right now, because they are horrid and awful against so many marginalized communities. And I really believe that we're in a moment in time that we need to navigate, and it's hard, and we need to stand strong, and we need to really deeply take care of ourselves and keep going, because we got to get through it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that you can't legislate us away. I know more attacks are coming, and we were working with Kim Fountain. We had her on an episode talking about community spaces, and she said, we will continue to exist. So the question becomes, how do we evolve out of this time? And I think that that's an important consideration. Well, we're going to take a short promotional break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about how DEI initiatives are impacting the nonprofit sector. We'll be right back.
Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the Fundraising Elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristen for your program and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at elevatenonprofit.com. You can also find the link in the show notes.
Welcome back. We are here with Sharon Papo talking about navigating DEI. Navigating DEI. I'm going to say it again. We're going to do it.
Big topic.
So taking a look at DEI in the nonprofit sector, how does a commitment by an organization to DEI impact morale and retention for employees specifically?
There's a ton of data that it does. There was a recent poll from the Edelman Trust Barometer. I don't know if you follow them, but it says U.S. employees age 18 to 34 are 5.5 times more likely to want to work for a company that publicly supports and demonstrates a commitment to expanding and protecting LGBTQ plus rights. So, I think that we have lots of great data sources that say that DEI continues to create a sense of belonging. It continues to create a workforce where people enjoy go to work, feel seen at work, feel recognized, and that still matters. And people, if you read the book Bowling Alone, it came out a long time ago, but they also talked about how people maybe used to go to work and come home and have more places to have community. And now we have less. We're less connected to religious institutions. We're less likely to be in bowling leagues and on softball teams. And so people's connection to their workplace is stronger. We spend a lot of time there. And employees often have more expectations of their employers. And so employers are feeling that, and that can feel harder when people say, hey, if you don't align with my values, I don't know if I feel comfortable working here. And that can be tricky when you have employees who have a large diversity of value systems. But that's why it's important for a company to say, this is what we believe, this is what we stand for, and to be really honest and upfront about that from day one.
I think the positive attribute of the organizations thinking about their workforce, the intelligence base that they have, the customer base that they have, and the diversity of lives that they touch, there's a lot of positive sort of business cases to be made about retaining your DEI programs. There's a lot of sort of evolution of product offerings and intelligence around keeping DEI offerings for evolution of problem solving and things like that. I'm curious about the risk, though, when you're in the nonprofit sector and you're getting a large, federal funding, and you're getting urged by the federal government to eliminate your DEI programs. Where do you see risk when, board is sitting around evaluating next steps? Where do you see kind of the rub and the challenges that they're up against right now?
Yeah, well, I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. So I always encourage people to make sure they are talking to lawyers and doing their own risk assessment, which is different if you are receiving a large share of federal funds than if you don't. There lots of executive orders. Executive orders are not laws. Mm-hmm. They are directives by the President of the United States. They are really for federal agencies. However, they are expanding to who federal agencies may choose to fund and use as contractors. So that's, of course, on people's minds. But they're not laws of the land. They don't go into nonprofits that don't receive federal funding. And I think that it's just so important to also realize that something is said and then is it lawful? Like, for example, there was an executive order saying around federal gender markers. And it said that on all federal documents like passports, it has to have, for any new or renewing passport, it has to have the gender marker that is on one's original birth certificate. So if someone is born and they're assigned male at birth and they grow up and they say, this doesn't feel true for me. And they transition and they said, I'm a woman, and they change all their gender markers, that the federal government says, well, even though your state license says F, you have to put, or maybe it says X, you have to put an M, which can create great confusion, can create safety issues. So that, I believe it was on June 17th, that a federal judge just said that's not going to stay. And so now, it'll keep going through the courts, right. But just because something said doesn't mean it's going to sustain. And these things are still being battled in the courts to figure out, what does this mean? I mean, the federal administration says you can't do illegal DEI, but that's not defined. Right. So some people are saying, well, we have to be really cautious, but other people are saying we need to be effective and we need to be also values driven. So I think that people are walking this tightrope in various ways. Yeah. But if we proactively take steps to say, we don't want any risk, and therefore we're going to get rid of all these great things that have built our workforce and been really successful. If we take all those things away, we are going to create a lot of harm that is also going to have a backlash, not only on our organizations, but also is going to be really hard in this country. So we are living through interesting times.
We are. Yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking about our nonprofit superheroes out there who, I think we've been up to this point talking about organizations that can name a policy, DEI or not,
right?
That can put on that hat or not. But there is a huge swath of nonprofit partners out there who can't change the work they do.
Right.
Literally their work is that. And they don't call it DEI because it's their work.
Right.
That's right.
And so I think, in that space, that becomes a whole different layer of feeling targeted or seen or not seen or what that is. I don't have a question in that necessarily. I just want to hold that because I do see that as well. It's, I think some of our corporate examples, they can make a choice. I'm selling this widget. I can opt in or opt out of DEI. Right. But in some of our nonprofit space, it's making people seen.
Yeah.
It's making people belong. That's their mission. And those folks are the folks being targeted. And so I just want to hold some cheerleading and some complexity for our friends in that space too.
100%. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
And I think when we look at Title VII and we talk about that, we can't discriminate. So, it's important for I think organizations are really being looked at in that with Title VII in mind. So you have a group, and now it's hard to say this is only for this group. We have a scholarship only for this group. And so so there might be other ways that we're saying, all right, well, if we may have a scholarship fund that if we can't say it's for this specific group, it might be for people who have had these challenges, and it's opened up, but there still is a lot of opportunity to support that particular group in getting the funding or support. So it does involve some creativity and workarounds. And
I have heard some language changes in the nonprofit space. I've heard folks starting to like move away from using DEI or move away from using language that, JEDI is another term that we hear often, justice, equity. And it's one of those sort of shifts that I think we're trying to figure out how we remain true to value and also still not create a fear factor, right? Like if the monster is the DEI work that's being painted as like, this is the bad thing, which we all know it is not. But if that is the thing that people are afraid of, choosing different language, choosing different ways to approach it, choosing different perspectives of how to bring people along, it's a shift that I'm seeing a little bit here and there in this sector in nonprofits.
Yeah. And what's most important is that the work continues. I think what we call it can change. I'm not attached to any particular language. I'm committed to the world that we're building. And if there's a word that's in the way of us having a conversation, let's take that word away. Or those initials away, and let's use other language. So for example, the word microaggression, I believe it's Dr. Jana Marcus who says subtle acts of exclusion. And I love that. Like there are different ways that we can call things that open up a conversation and understanding. And I think we need to keep learning and evolving our language.
I'm wondering, Sharon, if you can put on your fundraising consulting hat. And I'm thinking about our fearless fundraisers out there. Do you have any ideas or advice for them in feeling confident in asking right now in this space? Has it changed anything really for what that looks like? Or does it underscore certain things we should have been doing all along?
Well, I think always getting to know our donors and always knowing what they care about. And when we know that this is something that people care deeply about, really finding out why and letting them know how you're advancing work in this way and bringing them in as partners. So I think that, your donors may not have alignment with you on every personal value that you have, but if the work that you're doing in your organization, if people feel alignment, then that's great. They're going to feel more connected. And right, there's donor attrition. Some people every year are going to walk away for various reasons. And so thinking, how am I building the organizational family? Who are the real partners who really believe in our work and want to help us do this? And then let's be really honest and transparent about what we're doing and how we're doing it and where we're struggling and how they can help.
I think that the Costco example is a really interesting look at the sort of flip of the Target example. And I think in the nonprofit sector, we've seen that same thing happen where those organizations who have very bravely and strongly said, no, this is our value choice. This is what we're doing and continuing to do. Unless there's a law that prevents us from moving in this direction, we're continuing to make these choices. I've often found that there occasionally is a rub or there occasionally is conflict, but oftentimes there's an appreciation of clarity. And we're hearing from employees, donors, sponsors, that they appreciate the clear vision, because I think there's a lot of wait and see right now in the nonprofit sector around like, we're going to wait and ride the wave, right? And I think those organizations that are not waiting to see, but are actually like taking a stance, making choices. And sometimes those choices are, this is new language we're using. This is what we're moving away from. This is what we're changing. This is what we're adding. But that clarity creates a sense of relief for donors, a sense of understanding for employees, a sense of sort of collective action that everyone can start to align with. Because I think there's a fear of like, what if I say the wrong thing? Have you had any cases that you've worked with or any organizations you've worked with where you've had like that sort of backlash or rub of a board member who's scared or a donor that's upset, and like how people have navigated that? Any like good examples of sort of how to stand up to that?
Yeah, well, I think first, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I think first, the best thing to do when someone brings you a concern is to deeply listen without being defensive and to really understand what they're saying and to use all your best reflective listening skills. I'm hearing you saying this. I'm hearing this is your concern. Am I getting it? Because I think that part of what happens a lot in our world that breaks my heart is people just yell at each other and don't hear. We just talk.
Yeah.
And that isn't going to move us forward. That just lets us stay in our echo chambers. Mm-hmm. And so I think there is a gift and something our world needs more of is to deeply listen, reflect back, even do an empathetic yes. I'm wondering if you're feeling this way because you're concerned about, using all your tools. And then after you deeply heard someone, to say, would you now be willing to hear my thoughts or my response? And to then share based in values, based in your commitments, and having that dialogue, and ideally it going back to, well, we're both committed to the health and sustainability of continuing this work, and I'm noticing we have different strategies to get that done. Mm-hmm. Like this is where we're on the same page, and this is where I'm seeing that this strategy is going to make us more effective, and this is where you're wondering if it's going to get us in trouble. And so let's figure out what we need to do to get more information to continue this conversation. But at some point, you have to have a process of making a decision. But I think that as you're having these conversations, to be as respectful as possible, to assume good intention as much as possible is important.
Yeah.
Because I think that the knee-jerk that people have so often to make people an enemy if they say something that doesn't fully align or they ask a question. I think we need to ask questions. I think it's healthy. I think it's okay to be a beginner in something. And I think it's okay to be concerned right now. So I think that we have to hold space for lots of delicate conversations. And I think what's really important also is that we're taking care of ourselves. Because these conversations can be so triggering to a sense of safety in the world that so many people are having right now. So I think a commitment to radical self-care is essential for this to be productive. And so if someone comes to you with this conversation that's triggering, I think it's great to say, I am really committed to having this conversation. Can we do it at 3:00 or tomorrow? But, setting it up at a time that you can go for a walk or do yoga or take 5 deep breaths or something before, and then really taking care of yourself before, during, keep breathing, and after. Because again, these are people who are on your board, in your organization, they're your donors. And so they're part of your organizational family, and they care.
Yeah.
And so how do we move together having these really hard conversations? And it's not easy. And I've seen it unfold in different ways, but I think that as a basis is a really helpful container.
Well, and what I love about that is I think fundraisers have been having these conversations for a very long time. And I don't know that we've always held the space
for care
around them, or actually paid attention to how hard they've been. Mm-hmm. And so if nothing else comes of this, that we understand that when it comes to values and mission-based work and people taking their capital, their personal resource, and investing it in your mission, like it's all high stakes. It's very potentially fraught. And now we have volume outside the room really high too, right? So the stakes just feel that much higher. But I just really want to hold our fundraisers in high regard in that space. They are in having conversations with money. We're not a culture that has a good relationship to money, knows how to ask for money well, knows how to release money well. So they've been in space having some of these difficult conversations with donors for a long time. And I think sometimes in organizations, we kind of roll our eyes. We're like, oh, that's Jim. He's a little bit racist, And so I think this becomes a moment where we can all get clear.
Get clarity. Yeah, absolutely.
To your point of transparency, Sharon, it's like we have to be transparent within our organizations about what decisions we're making about the money we take and don't take, and then being transparent with the folks we're taking it from or not taking it from. And I think there's a real opportunity here for folks to get clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And there's always that tough ethical decision of, do I only take money from people that I feel complete ethical alignment with, or do I take that money and transform it into something beautiful and for the community when I feel like maybe that's not working? So those are, big conversations for organizations to have.
Yeah, I think that the conversation about like where our giving comes from and gifts we do and don't take is a gift policy conversation that everyone should have. But also I think that boards and leadership staff having these conversations now and making choices around mission and value alignment, then fortify your fundraisers that are on the front lines of a direct conversation with the donor, because they know that they have a support system behind them. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully there's an opportunity in this to think about where do we establish our values, and also how do we prepare our fundraisers for those conversations and give them the support and the radical self-care that they need. Well, Absolutely. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to step into the fundraising elevator with Sharon. We'll be right back. We've been partnering with Greater Giving for over 20 years as our go-to event auction software. Greater Giving allows us to do our job planning fundraising events even better because we can manage guest lists, seating, bid number assignments, and sales all in one place.
That makes it great for our nonprofit partners and their guests. Check out Greater Giving for your next event at greatergiving.com. Link in the show notes. Welcome back. You're here with Sharon Papo. We've been talking about navigating DEI, so a small topic for neutral times. Sharon, we ask all of our guests to step into the fundraising elevator where we're all headed up. What is that one bit of wisdom or parting tip you'd share with our nonprofit superheroes right now so that they can continue to head up?
Well, I'm going to share a piece of wisdom from my mother-in-law, Patty Weiss, and it's quoted in my chapter in the Success Redefined book. And it's, when you find yourself in a pile of shit, look for the pony. And really, we're going to find ourselves in a pile of shit. They're tough, awful, hard moments. And I'm not someone that believes that everything happens for a reason. I absolutely don't. However, we are meaning makers, and we can find meaning in every moment. I think it was maybe Mr. Rogers who said, look for the helpers, right? It's like when you find yourself in a pile of shit, yes, you can focus on the muck and the smell and the awfulness, and you're welcome to have a self-pity party. But eventually, hopefully, you will look also for the silver lining, because even in really hard moments, they're there if we look for them. And I'm trusting that through this time when there are lots of awful things and hardships, that there are also amazing people standing up. We have fabulous alliance building and people stepping up to leadership and finding their voice. And there's so much goodness happening. People taking care of each other. And let's not forget that.
Yep. Well, let's think about those brave fundraisers that do want to lean further and say, yes, we want to make sure we're working hard to create safe spaces, inclusive spaces. You have a tool to help organizations do that with your eLearning program. Can you talk a little bit about how folks can find the eLearning program and what that program is?
Absolutely. So at LGBTQ eLearning, and our website is lgbtqelearning.com, we both provide trainings, virtual, live, but we also have a really fabulous e-learning course called Building LGBTQ+ Inclusive Workplaces. And many nonprofits have utilized it. Many for-profits have utilized it. And it's a great way of helping people with language, being an ally, understanding the LGBT experience in the workplace. Some organizations use it in their onboarding because they've told me that then they just don't have issues that come up because they just say, this is part of our values, it's part of our alignment. And we have people in our workforce who are part of the LGBT community, and we want you to have a better understanding. And it's just when someone comes on, they do it, or they do it in Pride or LGBT History Month or whatever. So thanks for asking. We're really proud of it, and we've gotten great feedback.
Well, we will provide a link to your book. We will provide a link to the e-learning platform and the website. If folks want to learn more about you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? Are you on LinkedIn?
I am on LinkedIn. Great. You can, if you want to find out, please feel free to reach out to me there. Also, again, LGBTQ eLearning, you can reach out there, or Indigo Skies Consulting is my fundraising firm. And you can also get there by SharonPapo.com.
Excellent. Well, we will provide all those links. We hope folks continue to be brave. And while the wave continues to come, I hope that folks will look into how they can continue to fortify their mission alignment, their DEI practices.
And take care of their people.
Let's
take care of our people. Including ourselves, y'all. Yeah. Including ourselves.
Thank you, Sharon. We appreciate you joining us today. We hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV Department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson, Heidi Christensen, and Adam Breeden. Video production by Shannon Doran. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. Marketing by Lisa Aragon. Support from Mary Elizabeth, Todd Campbell, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Hey y'all, it's Kristen. Before we leave, I want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, and subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, share it with a friend. Leave us a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thanks so much for being here and tuning in.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV Department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV Department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.